Exposed, 3 bone-chilling true accounts of eerie hauntings that will terrify you forever. In the small Midwestern town of Elmwood, whispers of eerie encounters paint a chilling portrait of the past, and nowhere is this haunting more palpable than at the Thompson farmhouse. It was said that on stormy nights, if you stood very still, you could hear the muffled cries of despair echoing from the family's fields, a sorrow woven tightly into the fabric of the town itself. Local lore spoke of faded shadows wandering the halls, a testament to generations that endured the Great Depression's merciless grip. And for the Thompsons, the past was very much alive. Sarah Thompson, a weary but proud 31-year-old school teacher, found herself grappling with more than just a fading farmhouse. With every passing day, she felt the weight of her family's legacy, bound to the soil that had fed their ancestors, but now under the shadow of something far more sinister. Whispers of lost harvests filled her ears like a haunting lullaby, drawing her back to a time she never lived but felt deep in her bones. Was this a sign she should hold on to the family's sustainable farming ambitions, or was it time to let go, as Sarah's husband, Tom, buried himself deeper in factory work, haunted by the pressure to provide? The atmosphere in their home grew heavy with unspoken fears. Strange occurrences began to puncture their routines, crops shriveled overnight, and odd symbols marred their fields like an omen. Tom, unable to cope, shut down, leaving Sarah feeling increasingly isolated amidst the encroaching chaos. Was the ghost of their ancestor warning them, or was it a plea for help? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Desperation pushed Sarah to reach out to her neighbors, the Diaz family, who had their own supernatural struggles. Objects vanished in their home, only to reappear arranged grotesquely, the howling of their golden retrievers piercing the night. In the quiet areas of Elmwood, Javier, their 17-year-old son, wrestled with his own turmoil, a longing for acceptance marred by the prejudice against his family. But as their stories intertwined at neighborhood barbecues, the threads of shared grief began binding them together. Unbeknownst to them, there was one more player in this eerie drama: Greg, a local war veteran, burdened by ghosts of his own. One fateful night, as he wandered beneath the light of a full moon, he felt the presence of a fallen comrade, a soldier yearning for justice. Each family, battling their own hauntings, stood on the threshold of uncovering not only the town's dark history, but the collective misery that bound them. As the harvest festival drew near, a storm brewed on the horizon, twisting the air thick with tension. Under the ancient oak tree, the town's heart, Sarah, Tom, the Diazes, and Greg would confront these restless spirits. But even as they gathered for strength, the air pulsed with unease. A blinding flash lit the sky, and silence descended. In that moment, the question grew stark and unavoidable: what more lay beneath their feet? What deeper darkness awaited to be unleashed? As the blinding flash faded, shadows danced unnaturally around the old oak tree, the once familiar landmark now transformed into something almost sinister. For a moment, Sarah was frozen, her heart pounding like a war drum inside her chest. The silence that enveloped the gathering felt heavy, like they were submerged underwater, caught in a world where laws of nature bent and twisted. Tom's grip on her hand tightened, grounding her momentarily in reality. "What was that?" he whispered, his voice barely audible, edged with panic. She could see it in his eyes, the flicker of fear that mirrored her own. The Diazes stood to their right, their faces pale with shock. Javier, normally so full of bravado, looked like a ghost of his own, eyes wide as saucers. His mother clutched his arm, eyes darting suspiciously at the encroaching darkness. Greg shifted uncomfortably, every muscle in his body tight. The air buzzed with energy, crackling like the tension before a storm. It was then they heard it, a soft, mournful cry drifting through the air, curling around them. It didn't sound human. From the depths of the fields behind the farmhouse, an apparition began to materialize, a figure silhouetted against the fading light. It seemed to ripple, twisting and turning, as if trying to break free from the shackles of time itself. Its eyes glowed with a fierce sorrow, reflecting the very history of loss that coated the old land like a heavy fog. "Do you see that?" Sarah's voice trembled, her throat tight with disbelief. She felt the pull of the spirit beckoning her to come closer, to understand, but deep down, she was terrified of what was being asked of her. Tom stepped back, breaking the shared gaze with the figure. "We need to go," he urged, fear dripping from his words like rain. But the rest stood rooted to the ground, curiosity playing a dangerous game with their sanity. Instinctively, Sarah felt herself walking forward, pulled by an unseen force as her neighbors hesitated behind her. The figure's expression transformed from sorrow into a kind of pleading, extending a hand towards them, raising the hairs on her forearms. "Help me," it murmured, its voice echoing through the air, chilling her to her core. "Help you?" she echoed, stunned. The weight of it pressed on her chest, the stories of despair, the voices of the damned. What had truly happened here? The fabric of the town's past trembled, threatening to tear apart. "Stay back!" Tom called out, panic rising as he tried to pull her away. But the pull of the spirit was stronger, gripping her heart like a vice. Sarah tried to fight it, but the flood of visions rushed in. She saw the history, the struggles her ancestors faced, and the pain that had been buried in the soil. Amidst the chaos, Greg stepped forward, taking a breath that seemed to signal a reckoning. "What do you want from us?" he called into the dark, his voice shaking but resolute. "Revenge," the spirit breathed, the word hanging heavy in the air. "It's not just me that needs help." A sudden wind struck, sending leaves swirling around them like lost souls in a tempest. The temperature dropped, and a sense of urgency flooded the air. The storm was no longer just on the horizon, it was upon them. In that moment, Sarah understood, they were all connected, bound by a shared agony that surpassed time. Could they truly fight it, or would their own buried pasts shatter them? The spirit's grasp tightened on her heart as a thunderous roar echoed through the sky, drowning her thoughts. She struggled to break free from its allure, seeing horror reflected in the faces around her. "What lies beyond our understanding?" A whisper echoed in her mind, one that begged to be answered in the face of foreboding darkness. As the first raindrops fell, the ground trembled, and the figures of Elmwood stood on the brink of revelation, staring deep into the heart of their worst fears. What awaited them beneath the soil, in the shadows of their shared legacy? What truths would come to light, and how would they confront the spirits of their own making? The winds howled like the voices of the damned, swirling debris around them, making it increasingly difficult for Sarah to focus. She could feel the spirit's desperate plea wrapping around her like a fog, suffocating yet enticing. It was impossible to resist the urge to know. Her instincts screamed at her to turn back, yet the sorrowful figure beckoned her closer. "Sarah!" Tom's voice cut through the tempest, strained and desperate. "Don't listen to it." His tone was laced with authority, but all she could see was the figure's luminescent eyes, full of untold stories and aching connections. Greg was now next to Tom, the fear in his voice shaking like leaves. "We can't just leave it here," he shouted, making his point loud enough to drown out the wailing wind. "If it needs our help, we have to do something." "There's nothing we can do," Tom retorted, panic surging. "We're not equipped to handle whatever that is." But even as they argued, the spirit called to Sarah again. The ground beneath her felt alive, pulsating with energy, echoing the cries of generations that had suffered and died, forgotten and unavenged. "Help me!" The plea reverberated in her skull, drawing out her compassion like a moth to a flame. The rain began to fall in earnest now, heavy droplets splattering against the earth, transforming the dry ground into muddy puddles of despair. The shadows deepened, creeping along the edges of their vision, alive with promise and threat alike. Sarah felt the spirit's pull entwining with her very essence, and before she knew it, she stepped even closer, drawn as if by the gravity of fate. "Wait!" Greg's shout penetrated her blissful trance, suddenly igniting a flicker of doubt. What if a rumbling crash echoed from above, a nearby tree splitting in two as a bolt of lightning illuminated the sky, casting eerie shadows among the bewildered crowd. Sarah's heart jumped. Her instincts screamed, and the spirit's plea morphed into something darker as she recoiled. What do you really want?" she whispered, terror finally breaking the fog of her initial fascination. The spirit hesitated, its glowing eyes no longer pleading but filled with an unsettling mix of anger and sorrow. "Justice," it hissed, sending shivers racing down her spine. She must know the truth before it's too late. Javier, still frozen in shock, finally found his voice. "What truth?" It slipped out as an anguished question, unprecedented in the midst of chaos. But the answers were rapid in coming, each note striking like a drumbeat of doom. The rain intensified, and between each thunderous clap, fragments of memories cut through the air, the feelings of betrayal, the echoes of lives cut short. It was not just revenge, it was love lost, friendship severed, and promises broken. The spirit began to pulse with energy, vibrating with rage and resignation, swirling around Sarah as if waiting for her to acknowledge its plea. "All of this leads back to you," it choked out, a whisper that felt like treachery. The ground shook again, and suddenly Greg was falling to his knees, clutching his head as if the revelations were too much to bear. "What do you mean?" he gasped, voice trembling with raw fear. Sarah's mind raced, connecting dots she hadn't noticed before. Family stories, hushed whispers about black sheep and betrayal, all diving deep into the tangled roots of Elmwood's history. What if it's true? She thought, guilt creeping into her gut as she pieced it together. The truth that had suffocated their families, connected them all like marionettes in a dark play. Would revealing it break the cycle, or would it just invite more chaos? But the spirit grew louder, filled with anguish and purpose. "Restore the balance," it cried, eyes burning and narrowing upon Sarah. "Unveil the broken legacy." And just like that, the warmth of connection disintegrated. Raindrops stung harder, the air crackled ominously, and darkness enveloped them all, swallowing their resolve and leaving them trembling. "What do we do?" Tom implored, desperation lining every word as thunder roared once more, drowning his voice. In that moment, she could feel the weight of their collective past weighing down on her chest. Soon they'd learn that history does not lie still, it waits for its reckoning. As Sarah gathered her courage, locked eyes with her terrified friends, an unsettling question loomed over them: could they confront the ghosts of their past and stand against what lingered in the shadows, or would they become another thread in the tattered tapestry of Elmwood's tragic history? The air crackled with tension, laden with the scent of rain-soaked earth and an unspoken dread hanging like a heavy fog. Sarah's heart raced, pounding against her ribs as time seemed to suspend momentarily. She glanced at Tom and Greg, their terrified faces illuminated by an unnatural light swirling from the spirit, which grasped tighter at her consciousness. "Should we run?" Tom whispered, his eyes darting around as if expecting the ground to swallow them whole. "No." Sarah's voice cut sharply through the chaos. I can't just leave it." The spirit pulsated in response, its energy crackling like electricity, demanding attention, and it felt personal. Inside her, something shifted. She couldn't shake the sensation that it was somehow linked to her family, her past. "Whatever you think you know, it's worse," the spirit hissed, its watery form staggering against the winds, creating an almost hypnotic dance of despair and hope. "You must uncover what has long been buried. In the shadows, it waits." This relentless barrage of murmurs twisted the weight in her chest into a knot of resolve and fear. Greg's gaze bore into her, desperately seeking answers in the depths of her eyes. "What's buried? What do you know?" A haunting influence stirred within her, memories she thought were locked away began flooding back. Names whispered in darkness, forbidden secrets shared in hushed tones by the flickering glow of a candle. Before she could respond, another bolt of lightning illuminated the surroundings. For a fleeting second, figures emerged in the cascading sheets of rain, faces warped in anguish, their silent screams escaping into the storm. They were all connected. Sarah gasped as a vision crystallized. The old stories. The ones my grandma told us about the betrayal of loved ones. A distant howl accompanied her sudden surge of clarity, as if the storm itself echoed with the voices of the forsaken. Tom's hands trembled as he gripped her arm. "We can't trust it, Sarah. It's manipulating you. I need to know." She cried out, pulling away from Tom's grasp, daring to take another step toward the spirit. "We have to uncover the truth, no matter how terrifying it may be." The spirit's form glimmered like a dying star, bright and diluted in the chaos surrounding it. "Truth brings light," it murmured, "but light can also expose darkness." Murmurs rippled through the crowd of onlookers, a tight knot of fear swirling among them. Was it grim curiosity or contempt for their stupidity that kept them from fleeing? Then Greg staggered back, gasping as if the weight of the world crushed him. "Sarah, I can't hear them." She turned back to him, her heart racing with uneasy dread. What was happening? Shadows twisted and morphed, the winds howled with a more feral urgency. The air grew heavy as the spirit's whispers transformed into shrieks, desperate and furious. "You have to save them. She will never rest unless you understand the chaos forged by betrayal." "Who?" Sarah screamed over the raging winds, her voice small against the storm's roar. The spirit's intensity heightened, flickering with rage, its gaze now piercing into her soul, igniting a heart-wrenching realization. "Your undoing brings their undoing. Find the truth or suffer their wrath." A crack of thunder shattered the thick air, and for an unbearable moment, everything felt suspended, as if time held its breath. Their eyes locked, flickering between betrayal, fear, and an insatiable urge for resolution. As the ground rumbled violently beneath their feet, panic surged through them. "We have to go in. We can't stay here," Tom urged, his voice distorted by fear. But Sarah stood rooted, staring at the spirit, a terrible decision pressing down upon her chest like a lead weight. "The answers are here, but what if I'm wrong?" She felt the darkness creeping closer, wrapping around her like a cold embrace, threatening to pull her under. As she took a deep breath, the spirit's eyes turned sharp, burning with an urgency that ignited the air around her. "Sarah!" Tom's voice broke through the storm, dragging her from the cusp of surrender. The moment hung heavy in the air, pregnant with possibility and fear. Would she walk the path of discovery, even if doing so opened a door to deeper horrors? The storm had awakened something that demanded attention, and deep down, Sarah knew there was no turning back. As the rain lashed harder, her resolve coiled tight. She was ready to confront the shadows of the truth, but would the truth be ready to confront her? Lightning cracked again, and in that heartbeat, Sarah felt a severing jolt run through her veins. It paralyzed her momentarily, as though the spirit had struck her with its unseen force. Time lurched back into motion, and the cacophony of the storm roared to life, an urgent reminder that they were mere mortals grasping at ancient secrets. "Sarah, get back!" Tom shouted, his voice a desperate plea strained with an undercurrent of fear, but her feet felt glued to the soil, pulsing with the spirit's frantic energy, its desire for release. The visions it offered bubbled up, shadowy figures battling unseen forces, betrayal weaving through bloodlines like a dark thread in a tapestry. "You need to get away from it." Greg's voice broke through again, rising above the tumult, but the sound was muted to Sarah, lost in the deluge of anguish and yearning for understanding. "Whatever's happening, it's tied to me." She gasped, her breath coming in shallow fits. The spirit swirled before her, a tempest of pain mixing into a shape she recognized, the soft features of her grandmother, the one who had whispered tales of the past in the quiet of the night. "You must unravel me, Sarah, find the betrayal. They linger in the shadows." Her heart twisted. No, the whispers grew louder, each syllable a stab at her resolve. Tom's panic escalated as the air thickened. "You're putting us all at risk. Think about this." But the whispers magnetized to her memories, suffocating her rational thoughts. The betrayal of feelings, erased from childhood stories but etched into family history. How many times had she flipped through yellowing pages of their lineage? Deceit lurked, waiting to be dug up. With a sudden surge, she cried out, "What do you want from me?" The spirit morphed, swirling into vivid scenes around her. The rain became tendrils, pulling her in. Unveiling moments lost a quarrel between her grandma and a man with haunted eyes, secrets bundled into packages of love and anger, forming a family torn by the unearthly. Find them. The spirit twisted again, releasing the barrage of sorrow cloaked in memories. Find the truth about your lineage or suffer the consequences. The crowd thinned, drawn to the intimacy of Sarah's struggle, their expressions a mix of fear and sick curiosity. Their original intentions vanished, replaced by thick tension in the air. A blunt wind whipped through, spinning tempers and flinging rain sideways. The fog began to lift, revealing those once shrouded figures from the lightning's revelation, their eyes now wide with anguish, mouths moving as if to speak yet nothing escaped their silent screams ever haunting. Tom Gregg. Look. She stammered, pointing toward the figures, each carrying their tales of forgotten grief, but it fell on deaf ears, for Tom staggered back, ashen-faced. We can't do this. We need to find shelter, it's too dangerous. We can't run from it. Sarah shouted, the adrenaline bubbling over. We have to face it. They need to be saved. The spirit screeched as if invigorated by the renewed determination in her voice. Its baleful form radiated heat. Yes. Together, you can strike the chains of fate they bound you with. But before they could comprehend the task ahead, the earth beneath their feet trembled violently. A deafening roar filled the air, the ground cracking open like the pages of a book ready to divulge its sordid tales. The figures writhed and twisted in the storm, beckoning them closer. Sarah, we have to go. Greg shouted, fear raging in his eyes. No. We can't leave now. She yelled back, grounding herself with fierce determination. But the storm roared even louder, the spirits shrieking, a harbinger of greater darkness. Find the truth before there's nothing left to save. Echoed the whisper, a doomsday warning that clung to her skin. Would she dive deeper into the abyss, plunging into the personal chaos of her ancestors' secrets, or could she escape its relentless grasp? With that question hanging heavy in the air, the ground shook violently beneath them, leading them toward the threshold of unfathomable terror. What other horrors lay waiting to be unearthed? The earth trembled beneath them, each thud threatening to swallow Sarah whole. The figures, now distinguishable from the growing shadows around her, recoiled yet remained tethered, eyes glistening with desperation. A chorus of cries filled the air, a haunting cacophony merging with the storm. Sarah! Tom's voice snapped through the dread, shaking her from the paralysis. We have to go, now. But the urgency of his tone only fueled her resolve. Each flicker of the lightning sparked a memory her grandmother's frail hands, the look of dread on her face when speaking of their bloodline, the chilling tales of haunted kin. I can't leave them like this. Her voice rose above the storm, fierce and unyielding. It's too dangerous. Greg stepped closer, practically pulling at her sleeve. His own fears reflected in the stark white of his eyes. We'll die here. A crack of thunder rumbled as if in agreement, dropping a fresh wave of rain, drenching them anew. The spirits twitched, reaching out like lost children. Please, they seemed to whisper. The plea pierced through her heart, igniting the melting fear within her. Turning back to the writhing shadows, she shouted, What happened? What do you need from me? The spirit took form, lurching towards her desperately. You must remember we are shadows of your past. Unravel the betrayal which binds us, or we fade forever. Just then, the ground split with a violent scream, sending shards of earth flying. The crowd gasped collectively as the rift widened, revealing a depth that seemed infinite, a yawning chasm that sucked in the very light around them. Tom grabbed Sarah's arm. Sarah, we can't let me go. I need to know. Her heart thundered, instinct taking over. She lurched toward the edge of the cracked earth, peering into the abyss. Shadows danced at the bottom, swirling like smoke clinging to truth. Your blood beats with our memories. You have to confront them. The voice echoed sharp yet soothing through the tumult. Sarah, Tom's grip tightened, worry hanging in the air. In an instant, a memory flickered, a face, indistinct but familiar. The man from her stories, a figure of sinister elegance who hovered over her grandmother in dreams. I know you, you were the source of her pain. She shouted into the void. As if summoned, the man's silhouette emerged from the swirling darkness, his haunted eyes piercing into her soul. You seek the truth, child. Then face what I took from you. A sudden gust of wind pulled Sarah closer. The tension twisted her gut. No. She screamed. With every ounce of courage, she pulled back, fighting the urge to fall into the void. I want to let you take me. Face us. The spirits cried, torment echoing in the storm. Beneath her feet, the ground shifted again, the rift threatening to swallow everything in a ravenous embrace. Please, we're running out of time. Greg's voice cracked, desperation swelling as he glanced to the deepening chasm. Unravel the secrets and heal the past. The spectral voice rose, wrapping around Sarah like a shroud. The pain and betrayal echoed, urging her pressing on through the chaos. The storm roared, drowning her thoughts, yet one truth began to unravel, the twisted lineage, ties that wrapped around her heart like roots. Could she gather the courage to face the blood on her family's hands? Before she could respond, the abyss roared louder, dark tendrils reaching out, beckoning her closer. The ground beneath could crumble or pull her to safety. What choice would she make? Would the secrets lure her in, or could she seize the truth and break the chains forever? The tension hung thick, charged with unknown peril, pushing against the fragile line of her fate. Just as a menacing image approached the rift, a scream erupted, echoing through the storm, sending chills down her spine. What awaited her on the other side? The chasm quivered, a living thing that sought to pull Sarah into its dark embrace. She could barely breathe, her chest tight as if the very air was becoming a weight. The figures, now more than shadows, stretched toward her, faces twisted with anguish, their laments mixing with the storm in a symphony of despair. Sarah! Tom called louder, fear lacing his words. Each shout pierced through her, anchoring her to the present. Yet, she felt tethered by an inexplicable bond to the figures. We can't lose you. The plea only confused her further. She wanted to return to the safety of their world, but which world was truly safe? The ground beneath her feet trembled again, sending tremors of fear racing through her. The shadows were unyielding, clawing at her resolve. I need to know. She yelled back defiantly, her heart racing furiously. What is it you want from me? One spirit, ethereal and glinting with anguish, stepped closer, its face twisting into a reflection of her own desperation. You must see, you must understand. Lightning illuminated the spirit's gaunt features for a heartbeat, and Sarah gasped, horrified. This was not just any spirit. This was a reflection of herself, a harbinger of forgotten truths. As thunder cracked overhead, an icy shiver crawled down her spine. What are you? She whispered, fighting the urge to flee back into Tom's arms. I am your past, your blood. Remember the betrayal. The figure howled, the sound raw and filled with pain. I don't want your pain. Sarah shouted in defiance, yet doubt tinged her thoughts. Somewhere inside, curiosity gnawed at her. What hidden truths lay buried? Then you will never escape this nightmare. Suddenly, the ground beneath Sarah shifted violently. With a scream, she stumbled back, but Tom's strong hands caught her before she could fall. He pulled her close, his heart pounding loudly, echoing in her ears. Enough! Greg shouted, stepping forward with urgency. This isn't the way. Stay back. Sarah shouted, her voice cracking with fear. What if this is the only way to save them? Save yourself. Tom countered, his eyes dark and wide. We can't let these spirits pull you in. But her mind was already racing. Sarah had to understand. She had to confront what hid behind the veil of shadows. Betrayal. The word hung thick in the air, laced with shadows of memories. Slowly, Pieces began falling into place. The man, the figure who had haunted her family. The whispers of regret and disloyalty. Your family rejected us. The specter cried urgently. Remember the darkness they buried. They sacrificed us to cleanse their sins. Lisa, the story's a breath caught in her throat. Her grandmother's final promise fell upon her ears like ashes. Seek the truth. Unravel the darkness. Reality twisted, the storm raging with violent fury as Sarah grappled with the memory that threatened to drown her whole being. The rift, now pulsating like a living heartbeat, beckoned her to step closer. Toxic whispers curled around her mind. Was the truth worth touching? The void, the pain, the betrayal? What if facing the shadows meant facing herself? I need you to trust me, she whispered to the spirits now frozen in agony. Tom's voice was frantic, almost pleading. Sarah, please. This isn't worth it. It's madness. But she couldn't shake the echo of her grandmother's voice. The enormity of her family's sins hung over her like a storm cloud, static and heavy. Could she break free? With all her might, Sarah took a step toward the edge, the weight of her choices pressing down on her chest. Before she could act, the wind howled, swirling shadows and lightning blaring as the screams intensified. Everything erupted in a chorus of terror, pulling her in deeper. Sarah. As the world darkened, she inhaled sharply, teetering on the brink of revelation. What awaited her in the darkness? Was the truth a comfort or a curse? The very air quivered, ready to unveil the secrets that could either save her or consume her completely. The darkness enveloped her, thick and suffocating, as shadows clawed for her sanity. Sarah felt the cold air wrap around her, their whispers consuming her thoughts. They promised answers, truths she'd buried deep within her heart. But what if those truths were too heavy to bear? Sarah. Tom's voice cut through the chaos, fierce and desperate. Fight it. They're lying. She wanted to turn back, to cling to Tom's outstretched hand, but the specters loomed closer, offering visions within their tortured gazes. With each inch forward, the voices grew louder. Remember the night, one spirit hissed. Remember the flames, your family's hideous act. Flashes from her past flickered before her eyes, her mother's sharp whispers about family secrets, the terror that gripped her heart as she overheard hushed fights. Memories flooded her mind like toxic ink, staining her very essence. Suddenly, a vision coalesced in front of her, a fire raging in the dead of night, the acrid smell of smoke filling her lungs. She saw faces twisted in terror, shouting, pleading. Were they guilt-stricken souls? Was that her family? Stop! She gasped, clutching her head as she stumbled back. No, the reflection of her anguish remained, its voice haunting. You must see what they've done. Only then can you be free. Lightning flashed, casting stark shadows that revealed the true nature of the spirits surrounding her. Faces twisted in sorrow and rage, they circled closer as if to close the loop, binding her to this wretched fate. Your blood is the key. Another spirit shrieked. Unlock the door to your fate. Tom's grip tightened around her waist, anchoring her to reality. Sarah, look at me. Don't become one of them. But the urge to understand was intoxicating. Could she face this nightmare and still emerge intact? As the air crackled with tension, Sarah fought against the whirlpool of emotions tugging at her sanity. Desperation turned into determination. What betrayal? What have they hidden from me? The spirits shifted, their faces morphing into those of long-lost relatives, their eyes pleading for comprehension. They hid us and our truth. We were discarded for their safety, their legacy. Chills ran down her spine as dread clawed at her heart. No, it can't be true. But deep inside, the flicker of recognition ignited. All the family stories of misfortune concerned those who strayed too closely to the truth. They had suppressed something powerful, something dark. Would knowing it be her salvation or her doom? Step forward, her specter whispered, extending a bony hand toward the swirling obelisk of shadows. Step into your fate. Tom's voice turned frantic. You can't let this happen. It's a trap. The storm raged around them with a violent intensity, catching the wind and throwing it into a frenzy. Fear and anger combined with her growing need for answers as she fought against Tom's grip. I need to know. She screamed, tears mingling with the rain streaming down her face. I can't lose you. Tom's voice broke, a plea that pushed her closer to the edge. The chasm vibrated once more, as if it sensed her hesitation. Its roar filled her ears, drowning out all else. With a heart pounding like a war drum, Sarah leaned into the void, ready to confront the depths of her lineage, but before she could take that final step, the world around her imploded into darkness. What would she discover there? Would the truth provide clarity or merely plunge her into deeper despair? Her heart raced life as she knew it was hanging by a thread. With a last breath of courage, she teetered on the edge of the abyss, ready to plunge into the darkness. What lay ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, but there was no turning back now. A void consumed Sarah, an endless expanse of disorienting blackness swallowing her whole. The whispers intensified, swirling around her like a cyclone of despair. Each breath she took felt heavier, laden with the weight of her family's secrets. With a gasp, she plummeted into the void, her heart racing as visions blurred past her. This was her lineage, twisted and hidden, time lost all meaning, seconds stretched into hours, filled with memories that weren't her own. She landed, if landed was the right word, on a cold, hard surface. Darkness regarding her with cruel indifference, except for a faint flickering light in the distance. Shadows slithered closer, shapes sculpted from sorrow and malice. Welcome back, a voice dripped with sinister familiarity, echoing off unseen walls. We've been waiting. She recognized the voice instantly. It was her mother's. Fear coursed through her veins, throwing her pulse into overdrive. The darkness morphed, forming a figure, a silhouette of her mother, shrouded in that same ominous aura. You shouldn't be here, Sarah. You were never meant to know. Why? She croaked, her throat dry and scratchy. What did you hide? The specter took a step forward, eyes gleaming with resentment. Because the truth is a dangerous thing. It will bleed your soul and drown you in guilt. No. She shouted, a burst of defiance rising from within. I'd rather face the truth than cower in your lies. Will you, though? The figure sneered. Can you bear what comes next? In an instant, memories exploded around her like a firecracker. Scenes of a family torn apart, her younger self, eyes wide with horror, standing before a pile of smoldering ashes. It wasn't just a fire, it was a massacre. The screams of innocent lives joined the whispers, enveloping her in a cacophony of terror. Stop it! Sarah cried, clutching her ears in a desperate attempt to block it all out. You have to let me go. All the answers lie in the flames, Sarah, in what you've forgotten. The spirit's gaze hardened, intensifying the shadows around her. To uncover your fate, you must embrace the tragedy your family chose to forsake. No. Tom's voice shattered the noise, echoing in the recesses of her mind like a lifeline. Don't listen to her. She's manipulating you. Suddenly, the space buckled, dark tendrils lunging at her, tightening around her stillness like a vice. Dread constricted her chest as she looked from Tom, now a flicker of light fighting the encroaching darkness, to her mother's figure. A bitter realization washed over her. She was caught in a battle not just for answers but for her very soul. Freedom slipped through her fingers as the specter hissed, only by accepting your past can you control your destiny. Dismiss it, and you'll be lost forever. Tom! She yelled, terror etching deep lines on her face. I don't know what to do. Fight! He ordered, fierce and unyielding amidst the chaos. You have the strength within you. Torn between two worlds, Sarah felt her resolve quake. She could barely distinguish Tom's light from the engulfing darkness. As the specter loomed, reaching to grip her heart, anxiety coursed through her limbs. A wave of defiance ignited in her chest, shining through the impending despair. Where would this lead her? Would she succumb to darkness or rise to reclaim her power? As she took a trembling step forward into the blinding light, the shadows tightened their hold. Desperation clawed at her throat. Could she confront her family's legacy? In that moment, she saw a flicker of truth within the flames ahead. A flicker of hope or an eternal trap. What would await her on the other side? With her heart in her throat, she steeled herself and pushed forward, ready to uncover the shadows of her past once and for all. As the storm swirled furiously above, Sarah felt the oppressive darkness closing in, but something flickered deep within her, a glimmer of hope. It bloomed in her chest like a flower fighting for sunlight through cracked earth. She had to fight, to grasp that fleeting light, even as the shadows loomed closer. Sarah. Tom's voice pierced through the chaos like a lighthouse cutting through fog. You have the strength to push through. Remember who you are. With every shout, every plea, she found herself teetering on the edges of panic and resolve. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, letting Tom's energy wrap around her, infusing her with courage. I will not be your pawn, she muttered under her breath. I will face you. In that moment of fierce determination, the specter of her mother flickered violently, revealing the sorrow etched into its eyes. You cannot escape your blood, Sarah. Love is born of sacrifice, but pursuit of the truth demands a high toll. A rush of anger surged through Sarah, fueled by a decade of unanswered questions. You sacrificed others. You can't pin that burden on me. The ground beneath her trembled, shadows lashing out in protest. But as she stood her ground, the shadows recoiled, creating a corridor of light ahead. Lighting began to strike furiously around her, illuminating the faces of those lost to her family's buried past. She saw each soul, each story silenced by betrayal and choices made in fear. Embrace us, remember our truths. They cried in unison, swirling around her like memories demanding attention. Only then can you set us free. Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks as the weight of the past crashed down around her. You have to help me uncover the truth. She shouted, feeling her heart racing like a wild horse. I want to know. Suddenly, all at once, she was back at the ancient oak tree, where it had all begun. The storm had dwindled to a soothing drizzle, and wrapped in the warmth of the morning sun, she felt the weight of centuries gently lift. Tom stood beside her, his face softening as he took her hand, grounding her. You did it, Sarah, he breathed, awe echoing in his eyes. You faced your truth. The spirits, once twisted and sorrowful, now glowed with a serene light, radiating peace. Thank you, they whispered, their voices intertwining in the crisp air. You have unveiled the specter of betrayal and offered love a path to mend. As the echoes of their gratitude faded into the air, a sense of relief washed over her. She looked back at her friends, the Diazes standing together at the edge of the clearing, eyes wide with wonder. Javier finally spoke, his voice filled with tentative hope. Is it over? Not yet, Sarah replied, but we have the power to break the cycles. We can share the stories of our past, keep them alive, and learn from them. They all stood in a circle, hand in hand, finding strength in each other. Greg nodded slowly, affirming the shared promise. Together we can change the legacy of Elmwood, give a voice to the voiceless. The wind picked up, sweeping around them, a whispering blessing of renewal. She watched as the spirits drifted into the sky, freeing themselves from the weight of their suffering, their faces peaceful for the first time. Let us rebuild our understanding, Sarah urged her friends, her voice firm. Let us write the true history of our families, so they are never forgotten. As they stood there, watching the last of the mist dissipate in the glow of the dawn, Sarah finally understood the strength that lay in vulnerability. She smiled at Tom, whose eyes reflected the warm sunlight breaking through the clouds. We have a journey ahead, but at least we're not alone anymore. As a new day dawned over Elmwood, the town was filled with renewed purpose. The whisper of ghosts lingered, but now, it felt like a gentle reminder, a call to honor truth, to embrace connection, to seek healing. And as they walked towards their new beginning, Sarah felt a renewed sense of hope wrapping itself around her heart, the determination to face whatever lay ahead. No more secrets. No more lost souls. Hiding in shadows that if anything had been lost to fear, it was time to reclaim it. Now it was time to embrace life. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss these exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support and keep the legacy alive. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this incredible journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.